All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Um, Today we're gonna talk about emotions, and fear and greed. They're the two most powerful emotions that we experience in trading. And then there are feelings that are direct result of these emotions, like anger, depression, desperation, anxiety. All of these feelings that we feel, and this is, I mean, there's more to this list, but everything that we feel is going to be a direct result of fear and greed. So, we have to make sure we understand where it's coming from, and more importantly, how we can deal with it. Now, there's no way in the world you're going to eliminate all your emotions. There are very few people in this world you know, who can control their emotions. Those are the psychotic people. People that have no feeling, that can, beat lie detector tests. There's very few people that can do that. But most of us, I guess 99% of us, our emotions are going to affect us in one way or another. Now, some people, it's going to affect us more than others. But it's up to us to figure out, where we fall and what we need to do in order to, deal with these. So, the first one we're going to talk about is fear. And, our minds are hardwired with fear, because this is what we have inherently that's going to keep us safe, or that's supposed to keep us safe. There again, we all have different levels of fear. Some people live in fear of getting in a car and driving down the road. Some people may have a fear of getting in a airplane. But whatever the case is, we all experience that kind of fear. And it's a vital, indispensable reflex that keeps us alive and strong. It serves us well when we're running from a black bear in the woods, or, facing an enemy in war. But when this fear overpowers the detached, calm analysis that we need in day trading, that fear, that mechanism that's meant to keep us safe, it turns into our downfall. And I know you've heard me say it many times that, trading goes against human emotion. So we have to really, not just human emotion, but just our natural human instincts. It just goes against all of that. And, we have to kind of turn that around in order to make, be a successful day trader. But new traders get beat up the most by fear. Inexperienced traders get beat up the most by fear. Their lack of experience and time in the market, it creates overconfidence. It can create recklessness, which causes big losses. You have that guy that's just been trading for 1 week or two, and all of a sudden hits this huge trade, and now you can't tell him a damn thing. I don't need to go slow. I don't need to move slow. I got it. And next thing you know, he blows up, and then that fear comes in. He loses money, and he realizes, maybe I don't have this, and that fear sets in. So fear can happen to a trader in two main ways. First, fear can take over just before you enter a trade. You look at your charts, you know what setup you're looking for, and right when it's time to get in, you freeze. And then you start questioning your strategy. You start thinking, the trade is too risky. By the time you get over this and you feel like you really want to get in, it's too late. And, sometimes I do the same thing. We call it paralysis by analysis. We're over analyzing things because of the fear we have of being wrong. We don't want to be wrong. So, we're not going to take trades. And we can't have that fear. We can be upset and we can be mad, because we're wrong, and we don't, we never want to be wrong. But we do have to accept it. So it's just a matter of repetition. It's a matter of repetition. But we'll talk about, I'll share how I got over my fear here in just a few. And we'll talk about those strategies. So the second scenario happens when you're already in the trade. Fear can make you dump your trade before you even get to your target. The volatility of the stock moving up and down, will get you emotional. That's one thing you guys can see by just watching and listening to me in a trade. Just like this morning with IQ. The stock was just moving, crazy. It wasn't making sense. And, it brings up some emotion in you. And that you may have that fear of losing, and you don't want to lose, and you get mad. And that's the hard part of trading, is dealing with the movement of a stock. Because very seldom when you get in a stock will it go exactly where you want it to go. If it does, even if it's in the midst of a downtrend, just like when I caught, by the time I was able to get in TVIX, it was already going down. But it's still going to pop up and take me red for a minute, And if you're sitting there watching that, it's going to strike some fear in you. So the next time you get $20, $30, you're going to take the trade off. He's like, I'd rather make $20, $30 than to lose $100. So, and you'll never let trades work. So you do 3 trades like that, and then one trade never goes your way and stops you out at 100. You're still red. You got 3 winning trades, 1 losing trade, and you're still red on the day. And that just really tears you up. So how do you overcome fear? Number 1, you got to get educated. What I did was I got educated. And it was, at first, I didn't see it. But then as I thought about it, I realized, sometimes being an educator, I forget the value of me being educated. Because I'm the teacher in the classroom, I'm supposed to be the expert, but I've got to be educated too. I've got to stay on top of things. And it's important that I have somebody that's going to, teach me and help me grow, so that everything I'm doing comes together and it continues to make sense to me. So what I did was I blocked out everything. And I said, I need to learn one strategy, one setup, and just become very proficient at it. And so it was an opening range breakout. I wasn't even shorting then. I was only going long. And so I learned that opening range breakout. So what it did, it only put me in the market in the morning. And then the rest of the day, when I had the time, I could just watch price action, kind of look at what other people did. But I did not actually trade or practice anything else until I got that one setup down. And then I went to the setup that I trade off the opening range. I went to the reversal. And then I went to continuation. So just one at a time. And putting in, practice trading. I admit I practice with my money more than I should have. But then I learned how to use that on-demand feature on Thinkorswim. If you don't have Thinkorswim, then you may have to buy, get a subscription to Trading Sim. But you need to be able to watch price action. Watch what happens when stocks start to take off, when they start to move. Watch what happens when a stock gets to a level of support or resistance that you've got marked. And that's how you're going to be able to tell whether this is an area you need to take some off at, or you can just kind of ignore this and wait for it to keep going. But the more I practice entering trades, the more automatic I am. So if you have trouble entering trades, if you're sitting there and you don't feel comfortable entering trades, then you need to go in that market replay simulator and trade every stock on the watch list for opening range. And then you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see, okay, what stocks shouldn't I jump in on? What stocks do I need to wait for? And what stocks can I jump in on the break of the opening range low or opening range high? And when you start that and you have, a lot of notes in your, notebook, then it's going to be second nature. You're not going to even think about it. You'll just know what to look for, and then when it's time, you jump in. But you're always going to have that, paralysis by analysis sometimes. Because especially if you are gone through a bad stretch, or let's say you've lost a trade, and you don't want to lose again. If you lose again, you got to shut it down for the day. So you don't want to lose. But your fear can overcome you so much so that you can't even trade, that you can't even take a position. And you can't let that happen to you. So just know, a lot of people, and this is our issue, is that we do not like to lose. We have a problem with accepting loss. And in this industry, you have to accept loss. And you accept it and you move on. Because if you let it fester throughout the day, you're going to do something stupid. You're going to do something that may not make a whole lot of sense to you. So, and this is what I tell you guys and what I'm showing you every day. I use small position sizing at first. I didn't care about commissions. Commissions is not something you need. If you're worried about commissions, you're in the wrong industry. I know some commissions are going to be higher than others. That's just the way it is. It's just like anything else. But you can't worry about that. You worry about learning how to trade correctly, learning how to trade whatever strategy you're trying to learn, getting it down. Because if you trade that strategy correctly, all of your commissions and fees are not going to matter. And I'll say Sure Trader because it's probably, out of the brokers that we use, the fees on it's probably the highest. So I know if you trade correctly, those fees will not even bother you. It'll be a distant memory. You'll be looking at how much you made. You won't be looking at, well, I would have made, $50, but I had $70 in commissions, or you're struggling every day to be green because you only made what your commissions are. That's when things start getting in your head, and it invokes that fear, and you won't be able to take a trade. So don't even think about commissions at first. You're trading small. What you're wanting to do is work on nailing your entries and hitting your profit targets or your stop. Consistency. If you stop out 3 times in a row, but you stopped out according to plan, that's a good day. You may be red, but what if you didn't stop out? You may be purple. So it's just a matter of going in and practicing. I put in 2-3 hours at night trading because I had that big fear. I had that deer in the headlight look whenever the market opened. Whenever that bell rang, I had no clue what to do. And me practicing every night and building my confidence and knowing exactly what I needed to do, now that helped me overcome that. Also, I had my P&L. I hit it, so I couldn't see whether I was up or down in the trade. The thing is, in your mind, is funny. If I'm looking at the numbers in front of me, it's going to burn into my brain. But if I'm watching the chart and I know the price is below or above what I bought it for or what I shorted it for, I know whether I'm up or down. But the fact that I don't see the red number and I don't associate a dollar amount with that red number, it doesn't even faze me. I could be down $8,000 and it wouldn't even faze me because I don't know when I'm down or not. The money just doesn't matter. What matters is you following your plan. Now, obviously, in a small account, you're not going to have a trade plan that allows for, $2,000 stop. You're not going to do that. But I know I have trust in my trade plan to know that my stop is where it needs to be. So that if I do get stopped out, big deal. That was the plan, and it was time to move on. Another thing I did, I never traded alone. I needed to be a part of a community or a group. There's some people that have just private groups that are in a little, they're either Skyping all day or they're in Google Hangouts or whatever. And they're there to support each other. People who trade the same, kind of look at the same stocks. You got to have somebody or group of people that's going to help keep you focused during the day. So I always needed that. And I could always ask a question to, a moderator or whatever in chat when I got lost. When something came up and I didn't really know what I should do or how I should react, I could send a message. Now, in some rooms, I never got answers. But, some people I could do it in open chat and some people could help me out. But the key is having somebody that you can, relate to. And also, I just stuck to my scans and my setup. Because, a lot of what people call out could be BS anyway. And what I mean by BS is it could be trades that other people are taking in other rooms. And by the time they post it, there's no way you can get in. You can't see the setup because it's already set up and gone. So it doesn't really do you any good. The only time it really does you any good is if you could get to it and recognize the setup and the trigger, and then you'll be ready to trade. You'll be ready to do your trade plan and get ready to enter. Hell, the last community I was in, one of the moderators were taking trades from one website or one group that he followed and was posting them in the chat like it was his. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So don't worry about what everybody else is posting unless they're trading the same stock that you're trading, and then you can kind of compare what you're doing. But you got to stay focused on what you're doing, your setup, and really communicate with people who are trading the style that you like, trading the strategy that you like. Rod, you may have to readjust. Can everybody hear me? I'm assuming that if people couldn't hear me, they would tell me. Yeah, so you may have to restart your platform. All right, thanks. All right, so once you have your education out the way, like I said, you want to stay small until you're ready. There is absolutely, positively no shame in making $50 a day to start out with, just trading 100 shares. No shame at all. Because I'm going to tell you, I'd rather make $50 than be red 150. I don't know. Let me see what. In my small account, I am red $185.62. I would be damn happy with $50 today versus me being negative $182. Now, I know I made it back up in my other account trading TVIX, but I didn't have that when I started. I didn't have the ability to trade another account. I just had that one account. So $50 a day was a beautiful day to me versus being down $185. So you gotta put things in perspective. And it just goes back to not trying to compare yourself to other people, but compare yourself to you and where you are and what you have. And things will start making sense and come more into focus. Slowly increase your share size and risk, making sure you're completely comfortable at every step, being able to let the trade work. If you're in 300 shares and you're like a nervous wreck, you're in too high right now. You need to go back to say 200 shares and trade that for a month and then try to get back to 300 shares. You have to, because this isn't natural. It's not natural for people to be comfortable having a $50,000, $60,000 market position. You may be only risking, or you may not look at what the market cost is or the market value of your whole trade. You may not even be looking at that. But you need to look at that and see how much money you're actually risking. And it's not a little bit of money. So you got to be comfortable. Every step you take, every time you make that next step, be very comfortable. And make sure you stick to your stops. And you've seen me, every time I've had a significant drawdown, every time I've had a significant drawdown, it's been because I didn't stick to my stops, and it just destroyed me. Yesterday I didn't even have a stop on, and it could have really wrecked my account if the market decided to take off. And little things like that. If you have everything in place, a lot of that fear leaves you because I can only lose X amount of dollars. I'm gonna risk $100 on this trade. I'm buying 100 shares. I'm only risking $100. I stand to make $200. If the plan works out perfect, all I gotta do is execute. Get in the trade like I'm supposed to, and then lean back, put my hands behind my head, and watch it work. So you do that enough, and if you have to do that in the simulator, you do that enough until you're really comfortable. And when you move over, you're using smaller amounts of money, and it shouldn't be that big of a shock to you. All right, so the last part of fear, and this is kind of segueing us into greed, because this is kind of in the middle. And we talk about this a lot, fear of missing out, or FOMO. You hear about it a lot in trading. Actually, FOMO was added to the dictionary in 2013. So this is a legit deal. Okay, and what the definition says is the uneasy and sometimes all-consuming feeling that you're missing out, that your peers are doing, in the know about, or in possession of more or something better than you. How many of us are guilty of trying to find a better strategy all the time? There's got to be a better strategy. There's got to be an easier strategy. This guy is posting stuff and it seems so easy. I'm missing out if I'm not learning what he's doing. It comes back to really nail you. So how many of you guys are dealing with FOMO? That all right, so it's certainly not a good thing. And it leads you to check social media over and over and over to make sure you're not missing out on the big trade of the day. You're not missing out on what's moving. If you chase that all day long, you'll never take a trade. If you're chasing that next big trade all day long, you will never take a trade. And if you ever take a trade, you will be so late. You'll be standing on the train tracks waiting for a train that's already gone. And you're just standing there like, what the hell happened? What just happened? So you didn't just get left. You've been left. So you got to make sure, and that's why it's so important that you establish your own process for building your watch list, for how you use the scans. How do you vet each stock that comes over the scan? These are things that we have to do day in and day out. Now, I've been trying to wait for the market to really get better so that we can start looking at some reversals. And kind of going forward, you're going to see me vetting a lot of those stocks that hit the reversal scan. because once we get those work when we have real good volatility. And so we're going to start looking at that again. So all of the scans that you use, you need to have your own way of trying to figure out what stocks am I going to trade. The scans you got to have need to give you stocks that set up for the strategy that you're going to trade, so that you're not out here trying to find and listening to 5 different places trying to figure out what's moving. Because that way you will never get out of your way. FOMO comes from being unhappy. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that. The fear of missing out comes from you being unhappy about, you don't feel good about your trading. You don't feel good about trading in general because you're not making any money. You're not thinking that everybody else, you're thinking that everybody else is doing better than you. Okay, first, you're losing money every day. And, you're feeling bad about that. You're unhappy. You're not doing good. So then you come in, you join me, you come in the community, and you start trading small, and you're making, $50 this day. You may make $120 the next day. You may not take a trade a day, but at the end of the week, you're averaging about $50, $60 a day. At the end of the week, that's what the weekly average is. And so you start feeling good about that. And then you start comparing what you're doing to what everybody else says that they're doing. Then you start feeling this unhappiness again, and FOMO creeps right back in. And, now you're chasing because you think if you don't follow everybody that's posting these big wins, you're going to lose. You're going to miss out. And you don't realize that you are on your own timeline. You're on your own growth timetable. And it may take 6 months for you to get from making $50 a day to $250 a day. But I'm not going to even add it up. I used to have a chart here that tells me if I made $50 a day, how much I can make at the end of the year. If you made $250 a day, that's $1,250 a week. That's not a bad haul while you're learning how to trade, while you're learning how to be a professional trader. And before long, that 250 is going to turn into 500, and that 500 can easily turn into an average of $1,000 a day. Because I'm not saying you're going to make it every day, but one day you may make $2,000, and one day you may make 500. But when you average it up, that's kind of what you're doing a day. So, we have to we have to focus on our timetable, on our comfort level, and not try to force or push ourselves to get somewhere so fast. I had that when I first started trading. I started in January of 2014. I started full-time day trading. I'm like, I'm going after this. By the time June comes, when I get out for the summer, I'm going to be trading every day full-time. I don't have to worry about trying to trade around my job. And I'm going to not go back to school. I'm going to be so good and in such a good place that I'm not going back to school in August. And I tell you, that first summer was a train wreck because I was forcing myself to do things. I wasn't happy, and I was taking trades I shouldn't take. I was following every Tom, Dick, and Harry, trying to learn what they're doing because they say they're making this, they say they're making that. And that's when I realized, look, if you don't see it, it ain't happening. So get that out of your mind and get back focused and get to work. And that's what I had to do. And that's what all of us need to do, is to focus, put those blinders on, and get back to work and grow us. Because that's what we need to focus on. All right, so greed. This kind of segues into greed here. Because the fear of missing out, greed kind of brings on that fear. Because we want more. So we feel like that if we're not trying to find it all, that we're going to miss out. So that's why, FOMO is a good segue into greed. Because greed, just like fear, it's inherent in us. And it can't be avoided. We always want more. We want better. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to make sure that we use it in the right way. Because in day trading, we actually need a little greed. That's the fuel that keeps us going. It helps us continue to make higher goals for ourselves. It helps us to be able to take risks. But also, greed can create overconfidence. It can make us reckless. It can cause us to break rules, cause us to overtrade. So we have to be real careful when we're dealing with greed. Now, greed is by far the most dangerous emotion. Fear, though it's detrimental, just plain fear, it's not going to make you lose big. Okay? But greed can destroy you. It can lead you to excessive trading, taking excessive risks. You're going to be very inconsistent. So, greed can put you into some very bad trading situations. So we've got to be careful about that, because greed causes two different downfalls. First, when you're in a good trade and you exit right where you're supposed to. Now, you hear me go crazy about this all the time, but you don't see me jumping back in. I always say I got to wait for it to bounce, or I got to wait for it to pull back. But when you're in a good trade and you exit, when you say you're going to exit, good, well planned, it's at a perfect level, and it hits that level for a minute, and then it continues to take off. So you got to make, if it was good and if it was well planned, you've been patient, but now you see the stock continues to go. So what you're going to do, greed causes what? FOMO. This is where greed causes that fear of missing out. You're going to jump back in and you're going to try to follow it up even farther. Now, it doesn't work all the time, but let's say it works. Then you've just created a bad habit, because more times than not, that stock's going to fool you. It went through that level to pick up some new suckers before it took them to the cleaners. So you're going to end up giving back a lot of your gains. See, the second is when the trade goes against you, and now you're holding it and you're hoping. So you're sitting here waiting for that thing to go back, because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to lose money. You're going to make money. You got to make money. So you're just going to hold it and hold it and hold it and watch your account go redder and redder and redder until you just can't stand it anymore. Or your broker says, I'm sorry, but you're broke and we can't work with you anymore. And that's that. So you got to make sure you pay attention to these signals and what greed can bring about. Greed is a vital, but it's lethal. Okay, it's just Oh man, I just had a bad thought of I watch too many movies. But on the internship, there's this disgusting part in it where they're sitting there talking. And he's talking about something that's all inside of him, grinding and going and all of that. But that took my mind off what I was talking about. But it's inside of you. It's just working, ready to get you in the next battle. So that type of greed, you've got to lock it up. You got to harness it. You've got to restrain it. Because when you're consistent, when you're trading like you're supposed to, and you're sticking to a strict risk management system, the greed's going to still be there, but it's not going to be running loose inside of you. It's just going to be there working with you and not against you. And that's what you got to do, is make sure that greed is in check. And all that comes with having the right expectations. If you have bad expectations, let's say if your expectations are too high, that's going to cause you to really mess up. Your greed is going to want you to get more and more and more when you're not at the level that you can do that. And you've got to recognize that. Yep, another false expectations. All right, so understand the powers of fear and greed. You got to understand the dangers and the advantages. Know that self-discipline is a key. In day trading, your primal emotions must be caught and confined. That's fear and greed. But it's got to be put in a place where you can draw upon them. You can't suppress them. You hear people say you need to trade without emotion. Trade without emotion. Your emotion is what makes you a good trader. It's that person who's able to channel those emotions and use them correctly in the context of trading. Those are the guys that make it. Those are the ones that make it. And it's very difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It is hard. I still struggle with my emotions. I still struggle with them. But I've learned how to channel. I know how to recognize when they're getting the best of me and I need to take a walk. And that's all we need to do, is to have that process in place. So it's you against you. The quintessential human condition is us against ourselves. And, making great money in day trading, it's about beating human nature. It's about using it, beating it, using it to our advantage, not letting it bring us down. All right, so does anybody have any questions? Or something that I didn't cover as it pertains to fear and greed? And honestly, this is the number one thing that I work with traders on, that I mentor with. This is the number one issue, is dealing with emotions. Teaching trading and them learning the strategies and learning how to make the trade plans and all of that. That's the easy part. Execution, that's where this fear and greed comes in and causes you to go haywire. So in order to be able to execute, you've got to be able to work with your emotions in a way that they benefit your trading. Yeah, scaling in. I've never really got a hold of. Scaling out. I brought in scaling out because that helped me in with my patience on the backside of the trade. Because getting to a strategic point, even if it's just 1-to-1, if I'm risking 50 cents and I get 50 cents on the trade and it doesn't feel like it's moving or it's caught, I can take half off, kick my feet up, and say, okay, fine. I locked in some. Now let's let this thing work. I could set my stop at break even, and I know no matter what, I'm going to have some money in my pocket at the end of this trade. And I can move on to the next. This trade is not putting me in a hole if it doesn't work or if it doesn't follow through. But I've never really worked on or got comfortable actually scaling in trades. I just have a problem watching my average get worse as I scale in. Now, it's different if the stock goes away from me and I add to it, when it's to where I better my average. But, scaling in as the trade's winning, I haven't really got hold of that yet.